All right, everybody, it is day 7, the last day. I'm already at work. Small breakfast, small lunch planned, and we'll get home, get ready for our last meal of this week on. Let's see what it is. Back from work, got a haircut, and we are freshened up and ready before our festivities tonight because we are celebrating the 4th of July holiday, actually. It's not 4th of July yet, but they're doing stuff around town. So, getting a little bit of a head start today. And we are doing, for the last meal, beef and bean enchilada casserole. Boy, this is going to be an interesting one for sure. This is probably also going to have quite a bit of leftovers, which everything started to pile up with leftovers. So we're going to have quite a few leftovers for the next several days, I think. So let's take a look. So what we have here is obviously our corn tortilla shells. We'll need about 8 of them, I think is what it said. Our red enchilada sauce, our Beyond beef, sour cream, our gluten-free measure for measure flour, got shredded cheddar jack cheese. This is our garlic, salt, green chilies, a small 4-ounce can, a 15-ounce can of pinto beans, our essence of onion because we're not doing onion, and that is all the ingredients that we're going to be utilizing for that. We're also going to have a side, and the side is skillet corn and peppers, where we've got bell pepper, can of corn, bacon pieces, and some taco seasoning. That's going to be cooking while this is in the oven. This is going to spend a great deal of time in the oven. Now this is so interesting about her books. So, I don't understand this. She'll have these recipes like yesterday's recipe, where it'll tell you in the recipe to cook the meat. In this recipe, it's like, no, you want to cook it beforehand. So part of my prep is going to be to get the meat ready for using. So that's going to be one of the first things we do. We also have to make a mixture of sour cream, flour, and garlic as an add-on, because we're kind of doing layers. This is like, we're going to have this followed by this with its mixed in things here of these 3 items. And then the top layer is the enchilada sauce. And we're going to do a second layer of that, wrap it up, cook it, put the cheese on it, cook it a little bit longer, we'll be done. So let's get the prep work started on this. We're not going to mess with that until that's in the oven. So let's get the beef started. Let's get this started. Let's get the oven started. And then we'll also look at putting this stuff together too. All right, here we are. We've got our sour cream, flour, and garlic mixed. We have our meat cooked. So now the next thing we're going to do is, we've got the tray here sprayed up. We're going to start this at 350. And while that's preheating, we're going to combine this with our beans and chilies and onion salt. Mix those together, and then we're going to start the layering part, which will include the tortillas, and we'll get into that. All right, we've got it mixed. Now we're going to start the layering. We got our 4, the initial ones, put on the bottom. Then we're going to put this on top of that, about half of it. Then we're going to put about half of this on top of that. And then we're going to take some of this, put on top of that, and do it all over again. All right, there we go. Oven's ready. I'm going to put foil on this, and then we're going to put it in the oven, bake it for 40 minutes before we bring it out for the cheese. All right, cleaned up a little bit, and now we're cut up this bell pepper. We're kind of heating it up a little bit so it can soften before I add everything else to it. And then once I add everything else, we've got a little bit of this, got a can of this, a little bit of that, and about a teaspoon of this. Mix all that together, let it heat up, boom, you're done. We've still got about 22 minutes before we have to take that out, but we're making good progress. All right, everything's been added, stirred. Looks like it's been cooked through pretty well. Just let that run on low setting until it is time for dinner. Boy, ain't this a pretty picture. All right, we got to add the cheese to it. We're going to top it with cheese, put it in for about 5 more minutes. By the way, the cheese is the cheddar jack. Oh boy, look at this. This is quite something. So, let's try the corn. Corn first. Already you can say that's the best side that we've had. Now, it's hot, but it's good. Seven for 7. And that is a week on Dumb Dinners. Few thoughts from the week on. First off, the most important part, all 7 meals that were picked from the cookbook with the modifications that I had to make for dietary situations and a few for sizing differences, like not wanting to make things quite as big as she had them. All the meals were good. So if you're concerned about, like, is there going to be anything that's going to be worth eating from there? I mean, I think the meals are good for the most part. We went 7 for 7. Some were a little better than others, but for the most part, they were pretty good. Probably my least favorite was, like, the side dishes. It's not really because a lot of them were necessarily bad, but a lot of them were pretty basic sort of side dishes that you really didn't add a lot of value to Cookbook for that matter. But last night's side with the sauteed corn, that was really good. That was probably by far the best side that I've had. But like the mushroom pilaf, the rice and mushroom pilaf, that was good, but I could have easily made that. That's like, if you know how to make those sort of things, that's probably the easiest and most common thing to do. You know, and those things are fine, but you certainly don't need to go out and get a cookbook to make anything with these sides, because most of these sides are not very exotic. The anti-pesto sandwiches were good, I think, as toast. If you take a lot of the ingredients, change the bread, make it like a nice little toast for like a lunch or whatever, I
think that's very good for that. Dinner-wise, the chowder was good, but because the types of modifications I had to make for it were a lot more difficult than the others, probably was the least worth the hassle out of all of them. And, you know, but like maybe my favorite one, I really love the chicken one. The chili, the hot dog chili was, but the hot dog chili was also one that seemed like the least creative out of all of them, but it was still interesting and it was still good. There was still some things that were like, oh, I never thought about doing it like that, but it worked. So, you know, you can get some pretty good stuff out of this, I think. The other thing, which is the big thing, convenience is really not that's another selling point. You know, first off, is the food any good? Second off, does it sell very well? Like, you know, and the selling point was convenience. I guess compared to like certain ways that you can cook food, if you really did everything from scratch and you went to this, sure. But not a lot of people that I know of on this day and age, unless they are willing to give a lot of time anyway, don't really cook these kind of meals all the time. So when you're like talking about convenience, you're talking to a certain type of crowd here. Because for somebody like me, who does a lot of shortcuts on food, stuff that's already prepped in certain categories, this doesn't do a whole lot because you're still having to prep everything you do. Like last night's might have been one of the most dump-based ones I think we had, but you still had to prep the meat by cooking it beforehand. You had to prep a you know, that sour cream mixture that you made out of it. You had to prep that. So there was some prepping that had to be done with it. It wasn't just a simple, all right, put it down, put it down, put it down, because it was like 4 parts, 2 layers. And, you know, there was a lot of dumping, but it wasn't just a dump, like as simple as it is in the infomercials. So there's that. So I wouldn't buy the whole idea of convenience. There's probably some higher quality things that you can do, because if you're buying it for the gimmick, not worth it, honestly. But because like you're still putting in a lot of work in these meals, despite what the claims are on it. Now let's talk about the weight. Jevons gained like 2.3 pounds, I think it was, on this week on. So I was determined to see if maybe I was a little bit lighter with my eating around the dinner. Could I actually avoid gaining weight, in fact maybe lose weight? Which, as you can see,
237.2.
I did lose a little bit of weight, not much, but I also wasn't super strict with my eating, but I was strict enough to the point that during the day, when I got to dinner, even as heavy as these meals are, I still managed to slightly lose a little bit of weight during this week on. Not a lot, but again, these were really heavy meals that were kind of designed for more than one or two people, and a lot of them we ate in one sitting. So some of these recipes were really good. I would definitely use some of them again. I might try some of the other recipes again in the future. Some of these new ones that I have not utilized, I might try some someday, maybe. I don't know. No hurry on it. But overall, the week on was pretty uneventful until you get to dinner, and then dinner was like a real work project. Cost is always a thing that you're going to have to run into. For most people, you want to live within a budget and whatnot, so the week on a budget series is probably the more recommended way to do things and the way that I would try to do things. Maybe not exactly the way I did it during the week on, because I was doing it more for like creativity purposes to show all sorts of different ways that you can do stuff. So I was really actually spending more than I probably would if I just did it on my own for a week, which would save even more money than what I did spend. And that was pretty impressive too. So, it was fun. And I look forward to the next week on, which should be an interesting one. And probably less expensive than this one was. See you next time, everybody. Enjoy the adventure.